Welcome to YGV Kannadiga. Please subscribe, click the bell icon and set it to all for more updates. Okay, let's start now.
Today, we're diving into the story of a true rebel. One of the most mysterious and, honestly, most impactful figures in India's fight for freedom. Subhash Chandra Bose. Okay, so let's start at the end, or what's supposed to be the end. August 18th, 1945. The official story? A fiery plane crash in Taiwan. But come on, for a man who was a living legend, the end was never going to be that clean-cut, right? To really get a grip on the mystery, we first have to understand the man, the rebel. You know, before he was this larger-than-life revolutionary, he was an absolutely brilliant scholar. But it was right there, in the halls of a colonial college, that the first real sparks of rebellion were ignited. Just imagine the sheer arrogance of that time. This wasn't just some offhand comment in a lecture. It was a slap in the face to an entire nation. We're in 1916 at Presidency College, and a young Subhash Bose is right there when his professor says these words. You could cut the tension with a knife. So, when that same professor manhandled another Indian student, Subhash had had enough. He organized a strike that brought the entire college to a standstill. And yeah, he got expelled for it. But you gotta believe he walked out of there with his head held high. This wasn't a punishment for him. It was a declaration. The British had just met their match, and they didn't even know it yet. And let's be clear, this wasn't just any student. This is a guy who went on to rank fourth in the entire world in the Indian Civil Service exam. We're talking about the toughest administrative test on the planet. He basically had the keys to the empire in his hands. This set him up for a massive, life-altering choice. Path A, the heavenly service as they called it, serving the British Empire with all the power, luxury, and security you can imagine. And Path B, a life of poverty, struggle, and total uncertainty, fighting for a nation in chains. What would you even do? Well, his choice just echoes through history, doesn't it? In a letter to his brother, he made his decision crystal clear. He resigned from the ICS, choosing what he saw as the only real path forward, the soil of sacrifice. And that decision threw him headfirst into the political battlefield. Now, the world of Indian politics was complicated, dominated by the Indian National Congress. And his radical ideas? They were about to put him on a collision course with the entire establishment. So in 1924, the British throw him into the infamous Mandalay prison. I mean, this place was brutal. The air was thick with malaria. He actually contracts tuberculosis. His health is just shattered. But something happened in that crucible. His spirit wasn't broken, it was forged into pure iron, and he walked out of there with one absolute conviction. Asking nicely was never, ever going to free India. And this new conviction led to one of the most dramatic showdowns in Indian politics. In 1939, he runs for president of the Congress Party. And he wins, defeating Gandhi's own hand-picked candidate. The old guard was just stunned. Gandhi himself famously admitted, "Subhash's victory is my defeat." But see, Bose didn't want a victory over his colleagues. He wanted victory over the British Empire. His demand was so simple, yet so radical. Give the British a 6-month ultimatum to leave India, or face a total all-out revolution. This was a direct challenge to the party's slow and steady approach. The response from the Congress leadership? Crickets. They just wouldn't cooperate with them. Totally isolated, Bose realized he was on his own. So, he resigned from the presidency and formed his own party, the Forward Bloc, to fight the battle on his own terms. And this decision, this choice to go it alone, it's what leads to one of the most incredible escape stories of the 20th century. With the British watching every single movie made, he literally planned to vanish into thin air. The whole thing was planned down to the last detail. While he was under house arrest, he grew a beard, even practiced walking like a Pashan tribesman. Then, disguised as an insurance agent named Muhammad Ziauddin, he just slipped out into the night. It was an insane journey, by car, by train, through the dangerous frontier of Peshawar, and then a terrifying trek across Afghanistan, all the way to Europe. His journey finally ends in Berlin, where he comes face to face with Adolf Hitler. Now, this was not some ideological alliance, not at all. When Hitler apparently tried to lecture him, Bose cut him off, saying he was there for his country's freedom, not a history lesson. It was pure pragmatism, using the age-old enemy of my enemy strategy to set up a free India.
But Europe, that was just a layover. His real goal was to get to Asia and lead an army. And the journey to get there was maybe even more dangerous than his escape from India.
Think about this. To get from Germany to Southeast Asia, he undertook what has to be one of the most daring naval transfers in history. A 90-day journey, mostly underwater, transferring from a German U-boat to a Japanese submarine using a tiny rubber dinghy in the middle of the shark-infested Indian Ocean. Just incredible.
He finally emerged in Asia, no longer just Subhash, but Netaji, the revered leader. He took command of the Indian National Army, the INA, and gave a speech that can still give you chills. "Give me blood, and I shall give you freedom." This was it, the final call to arms.
And boy did they charge. He formed one of the first ever all-female combat regiments in the world, the Rani of Jhansi Regiment. They marched on India, and for one brief, shining moment, they hoisted the Indian flag on liberated Indian soil in Manipur.
Now, on the battlefield, the INA was ultimately defeated. But Netaji's greatest victory, that came after the war, and, believe it or not, after his supposed death. The British thought they'd won. To make a point, they put captured INA soldiers on trial for treason at the historic Red Fort. But this action backfired, spectacularly. It lit a fire under the very people they relied on to rule. The British Indian Army started to mutiny. The Royal Indian Navy revolted. The ghost of Netaji turned out to be far more dangerous than the man himself. He was the ultimate X-factor. For an empire already exhausted by World War II, the one thing it could not survive was a rebellion in its own army. By inspiring the INA, Bose had shattered the final pillar of British rule, the loyalty of the Indian soldier. And with that gone, independence wasn't just possible anymore, it was inevitable. And that brings us right back to where we started, that plane crash in 1945. You see, his greatest, most game-changing victory came after he vanished. So the question that's haunted a nation for decades is still hanging in the air. Did he really die in that crash? Or did the master of disguise just stick around, in the shadows, to watch his country finally take its first free breath?